So, thank you very much for joining us. We're going to be covering, as I said, apprenticeships in the food industry. And this is just a little snapshot because there are so many fantastic jobs and roles available in the food industry. And we just wanted to highlight just a few and actually really focus on the apprenticeship route, because I think this is becoming a more and more popular route, but perhaps one that's not really known about quite so much. So what we're going to be looking at is really why an apprenticeship might suit your pupils, the benefits of following an apprenticeship route, the different types of levels, and the wide range of exciting job roles and careers. And we've got some fantastic people joining us a bit later on, and they'll be able to tell us about their organisations and the roles within their organisations. Also about how pupils can find out a bit more about apprenticeships and then make their choices and how they can apply. And then a little bit more about on-the-job training, and that's where we'll hear from the employers and find out about what they do and their role in an apprenticeship. And then also off-the-job training. And what I think is fantastic about an apprenticeship is that at least 20% of an apprenticeship's paid time will be dedicated to off-the-job training. And that will be provided by colleges, universities, or training providers. And we're very pleased today to have representatives from Rees Heath College in Cheshire and also Harper Adams University to provide us a little bit more information about that. And then we've got apprenticeship assessment and the role of the endpoint assessor, and that's a very important part of an apprenticeship. And we've got somebody from FDQ, an endpoint assessor, who's going to be giving us some information around that. And then also hopefully providing both you and the pupils some further sources of information and support. So first of all, just really thinking about what are apprenticeships. And this has been a really interesting journey for me because it's not something I particularly knew about, first of all. So I'm just going to give you a bit of a taster of information. And there are so many websites and so many sources of information out there for both you and your pupils. But this will just be sort of a bit of a taster, as I said. So it's an introduction to an occupation, and is actually different from a job with training, which I again thought was quite interesting because it should be a comprehensive route to a productive career. And the content is defined by an occupational standard, and then this describes the knowledge, skills, and behaviours needed for somebody to be competent in the occupation's duties. And then at the end, the apprentice's achievement is measured by an endpoint assessment. And that is quite a good thing at the end, because then that sort of is a culmination of all their experiences, their training, and actually is a proof that they've achieved the standard that they need to do the job afterwards. And then also that it's a partnership between the individual, the young person, their employer, and also typically an external training provider. And I've included a couple of links on this slide, which is a report from the Gatsby Foundation about apprentices in work, which is quite an interesting read. And then also a government website, which is all about apprenticeships. And then a little bit more about what they include. So it's paid employment, which is fantastic, and with holiday leave, so that's paid leave. And an apprenticeship would be more than 372 days, or 18 to 60 months. But there is sort of a bit of an allowance within that, because there are part-time options that are available for most apprenticeships, but that would mean the length of the apprenticeship would be extended. But if you've got pupils or young people that have additional needs, a part-time option might actually be a good avenue for them. So that's something to bear in mind. They provide hands-on experience in a sector or role of interest, and it will be great to hear from Kate, who's a current apprentice, and then Letitia, who's an ex-apprentice, a bit later on, because they'll be able to tell us all about their hands-on experience and what they've found really interesting and worthwhile about doing an apprenticeship. And then, as I said before, at least 20% of off-the-job training, and that equates to 6 hours a week on average, and that could be done on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, in blocks. It depends on the training provider and how that's done. And then there's a formal assessment, which leads to a nationally recognised qualification. And then also alongside that, there might be a professional body accreditation too. We've had some questions about studying from English and maths, and Janine is going to help us with that a bit later on. But if your pupils do need to study for English and maths as they haven't got the required level, that's not counted within the 20% minimum off the job training. So that's just something to be aware of. And there is some information on the link there to find out about that. And again, there's the link to the apprenticeships website from the government. Okay, so off the job training. So it's important to remember that this is delivered by subject experts, and that's definitely what our employers and our endpoint assessor will be able to tell us a little bit more about later, and also our training providers. So it's all about teaching the theory side of it, and that could be via distance learning, blended, so that could be hybrid, part distance, part in person, or it could be in block release. And I know that Lucy will tell us a little bit about the degree apprenticeship at Harper Adams University, and that's done in block release. So that will be good to hear from her a little bit more about that. And then you've got the practical training. So that it could be anything from shadowing, mentoring, industry visits, lots and lots of different options for practical training. And then learning support and time to write assessments. So it's important for the young people to know that that kind of thing is built into their training programme, because one of the things we're going to be asking both Kate and Atisha later on is about how you juggle studying and working full time. So a little bit about apprenticeship levels. And in England, Northern Ireland and Wales, they are the same. So we have intermediate, advanced, higher and degree levels. And in Scotland, they are slightly different. So we have a foundation, a modern apprenticeship and a graduate level in Scotland. And the SCQF level 4-5, that is done in the 5th or 6th year of school. And we've got a great recorded presentation on the website from Isla Porteous from SQA in Scotland, talking all about the foundation apprenticeship, which I think is a really good option for pupils to study in school. Again, there's a link on the page which it takes you to a UCAS site where it tells you a lot about apprenticeships, but particularly if you're in the different countries. In the UK, you can actually identify where you want to study or where the pupil wants to study, and then you can find out specifically about the apprenticeships in those nations. Now, this is something I think the pupils will be very interested in, and it's all about what they'll earn. And it will very much depend on the industry, the location, and the level of apprenticeship to choose. But it's important to know that it's a paid job. So if they're aged between 16 and 18 or in the first year of apprenticeship, the apprentice is entitled to the apprentice rate, which is £5.28 an hour. But if they're slightly older or they've completed their first year, they're entitled to the national minimum wage. And on the screen, it breaks down what that is. But it's important to remember that this is the minimum an apprentice can earn, and many employers will actually offer a competitive salary to try and entice the apprentices into their businesses. There's also a bursary that's available for a care leaver. So if you've got any pupils in your school who are care leavers, then that might be of benefit to them as well. And then the other great thing, I think, is that there are no student loans and no tuition fees, because the apprenticeship is funded by the government and the employer. And this is going to become even more important because the threshold to pay back the student loan and the tuition fees has been lowered to 25 years. Oh, sorry, not 25 years, £25,000. And the expiration time has gone from 30 years to 40 years. Obviously, this doesn't apply to Scotland, but that is definitely something that the young people might want to bear in mind, that rather than having a loan and a debt for that length of time, they can go down the apprenticeship route and earn whilst they get their qualification. So a little bit about why your pupils should consider an apprenticeship, and we will ask our panel this a little bit later on to give us their sort of personal take on this. But it's first and foremost a widely respected and industry recognised qualification. It's a paid job, as I said before, no student loans or tuition fees, high quality training on offer. It provides 1 to 6 years of industry experience, and that's really valuable to themselves as employees, from a personal and professional point of view, but also to future employers. If they can go to a future employer and say, I've got all this experience behind me, and I'm still only 23, 24, whatever it might be, I think that will be a real bonus. There's a wide range of choice, both the subject and the level. But then also, I think the learning on the job aspect really gives some other benefits. So there's ongoing support from the employer, peer-to-peer support, social benefits, financial perks. I was reading the other day that there's discounts for apprentices. And then, of course, there's a paid annual leave. And then what I think is great as well is that 91% of apprentices go on to secure employment or then go on to further study after completing their training. So it's a really positive route to go on to the next stage of their career. So how can pupils find out more and apply? Now, it's been a minefield, and I've been spending quite a lot of time gathering this information because there's so much out there. But I thought this might be quite useful if you wanted to share this with your pupils, just so that they could have a look to see what information is available. So there are lots of government websites, depending where you are in the UK. If you're in Northern Ireland, CAFRE is a very good website to have a look at, and FDF in Scotland, and then also Careers Wales. Of course, UCAS is brilliant now that there's a whole area dedicated to apprenticeships on UCAS. And then there's a couple of other organisations. There's the Government Find an Apprenticeship Service. So if you go onto that page, you can put in the kind of apprenticeship that you're looking for, the area. But also the other thing I think is really good is that you can look out on there for the Disability Confident logo. And this is something which I think is great for young people who might have additional needs or might have a disability. And it's meaning that employers have to think better about it and making sure that they are an employer that is suitable for all abilities and all needs. There's other areas that pupils can find out about apprenticeships. They can investigate their local employers. There's online employment websites, and then there's also their local colleges and their universities. So we've got Janine from Wees Heath College here today, but I have a local college to me called Hadlow College, and that's a sort of a land-based type college, and they've got lots of apprenticeships there. And then also the universities, if your pupils are thinking about a degree apprenticeship. So we've got Lucy from Harper Adams with us today. Kate is currently studying at Nottingham Trent University, and also Sheffield Hallam has a very good degree apprenticeship too. And just to let you know that we have got some resources on the website around careers. We have a careers poster that can be printed off and either given to the pupils or displayed in the classroom. We've got lots of different case studies around roles in the food industry, sort of in food, and we sort of put them into jobs that inform and jobs that sort of supply. So there's lots of different careers and things that pupils can have a look at. But we're also going to be doing some apprenticeship case studies, and they're going to be coming soon. And then we've also got some webinar recordings and some PowerPoint presentations that you might like to have a listen to. One of them is from Alia Porteous, as I mentioned earlier. She runs the Foundation Apprenticeship in Food and Drink Technologies in Scotland, and she's put together a recorded presentation all about that. So if you're in Scotland, I would take the time to have a listen to that. And then there's also a presentation from Liz Sampson from CAFRE in Northern Ireland, and from Caroline Millman at Sheffield Hallam University. So quite a lot of sort of support resources out there for you. And then just a little bit more about sources of further information. And these are sort of general sources. So these could be for you, or they could be for the pupils. And one thing I did come across was the Apprenticeship Diversity Champions Network. And that was really interesting to read about. And I put a link in there to their annual report. And it does list all the organisations who are diversity champions. So if you've got pupils that would be looking for a little bit of extra support, it might be worth having a read of that. You might have seen in the news that due to the coronation, some green apprenticeships were launched, and there are 6 apprenticeships. One of them is sort of linked to agriculture. So if your pupils are interested in doing anything around the sort of agri-industry, that might be worth looking at. And some other information on there, so quite a lot around sort of diversity and inclusion, because I think that's a really important point to make about apprenticeships. Tasty Careers, if you haven't come across the website yet, that's a brilliant place for looking at careers. So there's information for parents, for teachers, and also for pupils. And then a little bit more information from UCAS. Okay, right. So now we're going to move on to the panel discussion. So if I could ask our employers, our training providers, our awarding organisation and endpoint assessor, and our apprentices to join us, that would be fantastic. Great. Thank you. So I'm going to take my slide down in a minute so that we can see everybody slightly bigger. But we'd just like to introduce everybody that's going to be joining us. And we thought it would be a really good idea to try and get people to give us some information from sort of all aspects of the apprenticeship route. So we're very lucky to have Paul Miles from the Booker Group and Gareth Sawbridge from Mondelez International with us. For training providers, we've got Lucy Catley from Harper Adams University and Janine Reid from Reseath College. And then from awarding organisations, we've hopefully got Jim Richardson from FDQ. I'll have to check if he's online. And then as far as our apprenticeships are concerned, we've got Kate Rose from Mondelez International, and Kate is just coming to the end of her apprenticeship. And we've got Letitia Red from the Booker Group, and Letitia is a past apprentice. So let me close my PowerPoint. Okay, that's great. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ask each of the panel some questions. If you've got any questions for the panel, please do let us know. If you pop them in the chat box, and my colleague Ewan is going to interject every now and again with any questions that seem to be appropriate. So we're just going to have a sort of a bit of a general discussion first of all about apprenticeships, just to provide people with a bit more information. And I'm going to come to Janine first. So thank you for joining us this afternoon. So you work at Reseath College in Cheshire.
I do.
And it's great to have you here, because what we really wanted to do was bridge the gap between sort of school and university or employment. But what we thought would be interesting as well would be to sort of have your insight really working in a FE college, why young people might choose apprenticeships rather than just staying on at school and doing A-levels or going on to college and doing T-levels or whatever it might be. So why do you think pupils would choose to do it?
I mean, I think you covered quite a lot of it in your slides, but the key points I put was it's structured training. So obviously they go through the skills, knowledge and behaviours. So it's obviously very structured to the industry that they're working in. They earn while they learn, and then they're getting experience in the working world quicker. So obviously they're getting a salary quicker and they're getting a lot more experience, and that makes them more appealing to employers, because obviously they're getting a lot, the experience and the knowledge and the skills in the working environment, instead of obviously being in the college and having the knowledge and not having anywhere to actually implement those skills. It's the employers can grow the talent within the business, so obviously they can grow them how they want them to be, the skills that they require, the knowledge that they require. It develops the skills and motivates them, so they've got a really good skilled and qualified member of the team by the end of the apprenticeship. And then it helps keeps them people committed to the company. So a lot of apprentices tend to stay with their employers because they see the commitment in what they've the cost that they've put into them, because some apprenticeships can be quite costly, and obviously the time and the training and the mentoring and the support that's required, it's a lot of time from an employer. So young people find that as a big commitment and feel like they tend to stay on a little bit longer with the employers.
Great, that's really interesting. Thank you very much. And then we're going to move on to Lucy. So thank you for joining us from Harper Adams University, and particularly to talk about the degree level apprenticeships. So again, the similar sort of question, why should young people consider a degree apprenticeship, but thinking as well about what the benefits are, but then trying to think about people from diverse backgrounds or from families that wouldn't traditionally follow a degree route. So that's quite a long question, sorry.
Okay, absolutely. But it's really interesting what you say there about targeting those students who wouldn't traditionally be seen to go into that university route straight from their A-levels at school. And that is where the degree apprenticeship really does pick up those people and give them that opportunity, because the cost of doing a degree nowadays is scary for parents and for those that perhaps are entering into that, who clearly have the ability, but their financial circumstance just means that they just can't even consider it. So this degree apprenticeship really opens the door for those types of people who can then actually, as you've already said, they're earning, and at degree apprenticeship level, you showed the slide with the minimum wage that they could possibly earn. At degree level, all of our apprentices that are currently on programme, we've got only over 40 on our programme, are earning well above that minimum. And that is because it's competitive. They want to attract the best students into that role, and they want to keep them. And so it's a real incentive for those types of people to be able to see that as a potential for them to be able to achieve their dreams, achieve their potential, but be able to be financially stable for themselves during that time. And I think that's probably one of the most important reasons, perhaps, why they would go into that degree apprenticeship model.
Great. Sorry, you carry on. Sorry.
I was just going to say, but it's whilst that is very attractive, the one thing that must always be considered for those types of apprenticeships that are available is that possibly it might mean that they're not going to be living at home. They might have to move away to different areas of the country. And if they take on an apprenticeship at some of the food industry companies, they have multiple sites. So they might be travelling to different areas of the country throughout their apprenticeship. So there are those kind of things to consider as part of that experience. So if you are 18 and you are thinking of going into a degree apprenticeship, I would say consider those types of things in terms of where are you located? Will you always be located there? It might be what they want. They might think that's great. It's an opportunity to explore and go beyond where I've lived all my life, but others financially might feel that that's an added pressure. So those are the types of things that I think should be considered as well.
Great, that's really helpful, thank you. And it's often these things that aren't really thought about, and actually those are the kind of discussions that probably need to be had with parents and carers as well, just to make sure that everybody is fully aware of what the commitment is. Great, thank you. Gareth, I'm going to come to you now, so thank you. So you are joining us from Mondelez International, and you are Kate's manager with regards to the apprenticeship, which is fantastic. So first of all, it would be useful just to find out from you sort of what your role is with Mondelez and apprenticeships.
Okay, so the role of my team is basically focused on technical excellence. So this can be building process controls, capability of equipment within our pilot plant facilities. So it's very much focused on technical rigor and improving standards and driving the R&D side of the business forward. My role is, so I'm a senior technologist within the team, and I look after I'm the technical lead across most of our equipment. And my role within the apprenticeship scheme is I'm basically the coordinator for our apprenticeship scheme across all of R&D. So that involves the recruitment side, onboarding, structure, strategy, and line management of some of the apprentices as well.
Great, thank you. Sounds like a really interesting job. So just on sort of that note, we've got Paul from the Booker Group and yourself as an employer, but it would be interesting, I think, for the teachers and the careers lead to know about sort of what the benefits are to an employer. Why would an employer go through all the process of an apprenticeship? And as Janine was saying, the expense and the time, what are the benefits to you?
I mean, I think some of it's already been covered. Like there is obviously it's big commitment from the business, but it's big commitment from the apprentices, and you put a lot of time in on both sides. And we feel the standard we get through at the end of that apprenticeship is really high because of the commitment that's put in. So it's a big thing for retention as well for us as staff, because people are committed to the company, they like the company, so they're more likely to stay on afterwards. I think in terms of the people we take on, I think we recognise that no one's the same. Everyone has different learning styles, so it's good for students to have sort of a choice to suit their needs, and apprenticeship sort of forms part of that education choice. In terms of what the apprentices bring to the business, they bring sort of a range of different viewpoints, skills, experience into the working environment, which really helps drive our business forward and drive that sort of collaborative thinking within an R&D environment. It's an opportunity across the course of the apprenticeship for us to develop their skills and their capability in conjunction with the education providers to deliver them as the new pipeline of talent for our business. And for apprentices, it allows them to develop their skills and knowledge as well with the university and the college, and this is then reinforced in the workplace. So I think we mentioned it earlier about bringing that theoretical knowledge into a practical environment where they can really apply it. So yeah, applying that theoretical knowledge into real life scenarios and having real accountability for project work. And as I say, by the end of the apprenticeship, they're embedded within the business, they understand the culture, they've built up a good network with their colleagues, and it puts them in a really good position to continue to grow their careers in the future.
Great, thank you. That's brilliant. I'm going to come to you, Paul, now, and it sort of builds on that a little bit, because when we've had discussions before, you've talked about sort of growing in-house talent and how important that's been to you. Can you explain about how sort of the butchery apprenticeship, which is what you're here to talk about, so how that's helped you achieve sort of to grow your own talent?
Yeah, thanks, Francis. Good afternoon, everybody. So just to give you a bit of an idea, Booker, UK's leading wholesaler, we've got a multi-million-pound meat business, and we're serving circa 450,000 catering businesses out there. And probably 10 years ago, we recognised that there just wasn't the sort of talent in the butchery industry to sort of sustain the growth that we were looking at. With a lot of the high streets sort of shutting down, a lot of the multiples reducing the amount of sort of real butchery that they did and going more to pre-packs. So we couldn't find talent in outside of our own business. So we decided that we really needed to look at what we were doing in-house. We really wanted to offer people a career and not just a job. And over those sort of 10 years, we've developed a 5-level training development program that could last, 10 or 20 years. But the apprenticeships are 2 of those levels, of those 5 levels. So we use level 2 apprenticeships and level 3 apprenticeships as part of that 5-tier training program. And so for any employer coming to Booker, and all of our colleagues join us in, well-paid jobs. So they don't join us as an apprentice on an apprentice pay scheme. They join us as a colleague on a salary, and then we obviously give them the apprenticeship as part of their development going forward. And it's really important. And we'll have people coming to us with absolutely no knowledge whatsoever. So we're not looking for anybody with any level of experience. We will take them having never worked in a butchery, having never worked with meat, with no experience, and we'll give them that across as many levels as they want. And what we find, and I think a couple of the panelists have already alluded to it, is that you get people then that understand that there's longevity in the process and real loyalty in the process. And they see it as a long-term commitment. So although the apprenticeships are a fundamental part of it, and they will last, anything from 18 months to 2 years, the development programme could last a lot longer. And that gives us that loyalty and that commitment. And it works really, really well for us. So that's kind of why we introduced it. And it's, we've got 600 colleagues that work just in our butchery alone across our business. And I think we've probably got, well, over the last couple of years, over 70 colleagues have been on one form of apprenticeship, level 2 or level 3. And I think over sort of 500 have gone through some form of butchery development. So it's a big, big part of our overall plan.
Fantastic. That's great. Thank you. And actually that just leads on to a question I was going to ask a bit later on, but we had a question in advance, I think probably from an employer, that was asking, is there any commitment from the employer to take on the apprentice once they've completed their training?
From our point of view, they're already taken on. So they already work for us. So, we get a lot of interest from colleagues that, see it as a great opportunity to just further their knowledge and further their skills. So we have taken 1 or 2 colleagues on who have moved, literally have joined us and gone straight into the apprenticeship, but they're also doing kind of the day job as well. So the apprenticeship sort of that added bonus of giving them that sort of development. But they can join at any time. We've actually got colleagues, I know this is mainly for people, we're talking about, school leavers coming out of higher education. We've got apprentices ranging from 18 years to 60 years. Great,
there's still time then.
Absolutely.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Right, Kate, we're going to move to you now. So Kate, I know you've had some fantastic experiences whilst you've been at Mondelez, and you've done so well. So well, in fact, that you were awarded the Apprentice of the Year at the 2022 Food Manufacturing Excellence Awards. So congratulations for that. Can you tell us what attracted you to an apprenticeship and your route into the degree? Because I think that's quite an interesting route.
So at school, I now work in a very science role, to put it in perspective, but at school I didn't really enjoy science all too that much, because for me I didn't see hugely its application, that like it was very theoretical, but actually what attracted me to doing an apprenticeship was I saw that actually I could apply that knowledge into something, and also develop that knowledge that I had. So it felt like a really great way of going, I'm interested in the subject and I'm interested in gaining that knowledge, but I can apply it to something and really kind of develop that further. And as others have said, also like earning whilst I was earning and being around the experts and the industry people that already have that knowledge. And so for me, I'd studied a level 3 apprenticeship with Mondelez already, so that's the equivalent of A levels. And then post that, I felt like doing the degree apprenticeship would be an interesting way to increase that knowledge and stay with the company. As people have already said, I wanted to carry on working for them and build up those skills. So I stayed and did the degree apprenticeship in with them as well.
Great, thank you. And I just think it's really interesting how you just weren't interested in science at school, and now you've moved into something which is a very science-based role, but it's all about the application of it, isn't it, as well as the theory.
Yeah, hugely.
Letitia, I'm going to come to you now. So again, you're an award winner too. So you won the Best Multiple Retailer Butchery Apprentice at the Institute of Meat Awards in 2022. So congratulations to you for that. But then also you were awarded the Master Butcher status earlier this year. So fantastic news. Could you tell us what attracted you to an apprenticeship and what your route was to the qualification with Booker?
Yeah, so for me, it was the opportunity to learn on the job and to continue progressing with the training that I'd already had in-house with Booker. It was a great opportunity to obviously still do the day job, still obviously earn that kind of money, be around the peers, have that experience in the world of work, but actually gain that really important skills along the way and develop and progress. Obviously, I did GCSEs and A-levels at college, but it was never really the right fit. And going into butchery, I've really found that was the career for me, and really wanted to progress with it.
That's great, thank you. Right, well, we'll come back to you in a bit. We've got some other questions to ask you. And Jim, thank you for joining us. So Jim works for FTQ, an awarding organisation and endpoint assessor, and we're going to talk about sort of the qualifications and the assessment process a bit later on. But I just wanted to come to you and just find out a little bit about the types of businesses that are employing apprentices and what would be the opportunities in the sector. Now, I know you work particularly in butchery, but FDQ has lots of other qualifications that they offer. So, so it'd be interesting just to know what other kind of food businesses are taking on apprenticeships.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the minute, FDQ offer endpoint assessment service in, I think we've got 14 standards now that we do. So as well as butchery, we've got abattoir worker, we've got baker, fishmonger, food and drink process operator, engineering, food technologist, dairy technologist, and so on from there. I think the types of businesses that are taking on apprentices at the minute, I think it's all businesses, to be honest, right through from the high street retailer or baker, whatever they may be, through to the big levy-paying organisations that are looking at higher end apprenticeships. So yeah, there's plenty of opportunities within apprenticeships within the food industry at the minute.
Great, thank you. Right, we'll come back to you again in a bit when we talk about the endpoint assessment. Right, so we'll just talk a little bit more about the qualifications now. So Janine, I'm going to come back to you. And Jim's just talked about the different types of qualifications that they offer, but it would be interesting to hear a little bit about the apprenticeships that are offered at Reese Heath, particularly when we're thinking about the level sort of 2, 3, 4, 5, rather than the degree apprenticeship.
Okay, so we offer bakery butchery, food and drink, food process operator at level 2 and level 3. Then we offer level 3 food technologist, and then we do offer level 5 dairy technologist, but it is a degree apprenticeship, and that's obviously a dairy focus on that. So they're the food apprenticeships that we offer at Reese Heath.
Great, thank you. And I talked about earlier on about English and maths, and it would be good to hear from you about the academic level that is required from young people when they start an apprenticeship, and that's particularly been a question that we've had asked by a teacher.
Okay, so with all apprenticeships, it's not an essential, it's not a required, but they say if you've got a level 4 or C, it's obviously ideal, but it doesn't matter with training providers because we will support them regardless. So they'll do functional skills for the level that they need. So for example, if they were doing a level 2 qualification, we will then do a level 1 functional skills with them, and that'll be done. That the only thing I would say to employers, it would be additional time that they need away from the workplace, because obviously they've got to get the functional skills. So if it was a level 2, it would be a level 1 functional skill, and if it was a level 3 or above, it would be a level 2 functional skill. And we have the staff in place to support apprentices, and we do obviously have additional support if that's required as well. But if you look at agreements, it will say that sorry, my kids have just shouted tea, if you can hear that. Very professional.
I thought it was here in London.
Totally put me off, that did. it doesn't matter regardless, but it does say on some standards that you'll need like a grade 4 or C for level 3 and above, and maybe a 3 or a 2 for level 2, but it doesn't matter. We will support them regardless, and the support's there.
Great, thank you. That's really, really helpful. We've had a question actually for you about the apprenticeships at Rees Heath and whether they're sort of, what's the uptake, whether they're well supported by young people.
So I was said to this before to you earlier on, didn't I? I said that we've got loads of apprenticeships, but what we found quite interesting is that the food manufacturers have kind of took the time to get apprenticeships up and running again since COVID. So it's took them quite a while to be like, yes, we're now ready to take apprenticeships on. So it seems to be this year seems to be the year that all employers seem to be back on it and want to really push the apprenticeship. So yes, dairy technologists, we take on about 16 each year. And then with our food and drink level 2 and level 3s, a roll on, roll off program. So we don't do it academically, we do it roll on, roll off. So it meets our employers. And then the same with butchery and bakery as well. Then we do have curriculum supporting them, but we don't do it. So it's restricted to a September start. So we are getting the interest. Again, because we're nationwide, it just depends on the location of the students that we've got. We do try to feed quite a lot of our FE students to apprenticeships as well, but it just depends on locations for employers.
Great, thank you. So if I was a young person, I wish, how would I apply to study for an apprenticeship at Rees Heath? What would my process be?
So there's 2 ways you can do it. Obviously, one, you mentioned it, there's the Gov website, which I always direct everybody to, because it's not about us taking apprentices on, it's about getting young people into apprenticeships regardless of whether they come to Rees Heath or another training provider. We just need to get young people into the industries. So we've got our website, which if you go into our Rees Heath website, it will tell you apprenticeships that we've got live vacancies on. So all our vacancies that we put on the National Apprenticeship Service, we also put on our Rees Heath page as well. And then it also tells you the employers that we work with as well. So you can see, depending on what you're looking for, if there's something there. But when you go on there, it's got an inquiry, so you can just contact us direct. And what we've got is like a talent bank. So people that are looking for apprenticeship, we keep employers that are looking for apprentices and people that are looking for apprentices and try and link them up. So just apply and we can obviously give you information, advice and guidance of where to go.
Great, thank you. That's really helpful. Right, Lucy, I'm going to come to you now. I know at Harper Adams you are you reintroducing the food industry technical degree apprenticeship, or you've upgraded it, or you'll explain, I'm sure, in a minute. But could you just give us a sort of a little breakdown of it, and particularly what the main areas of knowledge, skills and behaviour are? I mean, I know that there are lots, but whether you could sort of condense that down into sort of overall, that would be great.
How long have we got? So yeah, well, we've been running the food industry technical professional apprenticeship, which is the one that's for the food industry, for the last 5 years. So we've actually, our original programme is in its 5th year. So we actually have got our first cohort of apprentices going through to graduation in September, which I'm so excited about because it's a fantastic thing to see them come through to completion. Recently, as part of our overall curriculum review, because it's always really important that education keeps up to date with industry. So every 5 to 7 years, universities will upgrade and update all of their provision to ensure that it's current and applicable to the industry. And our part of our programme was part of that review. So from September this year, our programme more or less has stayed more or less the same, but we have moved it from a 5-year programme to a 4-year programme, which has meant that some of the way that we deliver and the way that students engage with the learning material for that programme will change. But we think the changes that we made are actually an improvement. And one of the big things for us is the fact that when apprentices are with us doing their study as part of their programme, that they are not on their own as a cohort. They are actually then studying and integrating into the undergrad arena, if you like. So they're studying as part of a bigger group, which actually means that they get more of that university experience, which some apprentices can feel that they miss out on because they aren't there all of the time. they are obviously back at work. So we've tried to integrate the programme to actually make that university experience for those students much more pleasurable, and feeling like that they're part of the community when they're with us. So in terms of the overarching knowledge, skills and behaviours that are covered within our programme, much of it, it's the good thing about the food industry technical professional apprenticeship is it's very broad in terms of its skill base and knowledge base. And that's a positive thing, because particularly young people coming into the food industry, they don't know what the industry is all about. They don't realise how exciting it is, how many different roles there are, all of the different opportunities that are available to them. They have no idea. So the food industry technical professional degree programme gives them a very broad spectrum of those knowledge, skills and behaviours. So they'll be doing the science, as Kate was talking about. And I completely agree with Kate. Many of our apprentices absolutely terrified of the science part of it, but when they come in and they start doing it and they're realising how that's into context of what they're doing actually in the workplace, it suddenly all makes sense, which is so refreshing for them. And suddenly they start to lose that fear. So they're doing the science, they're looking at the nutritional aspects, they're looking at product development, they're doing marketing skills, they're looking at innovation, they are doing management disciplines. And all of that is sort of built at a base level. And then obviously as you go through the programme, you're building on those skills to level 6, which is essential final year degree level, to come out with a BSc in food, BSc honours in food science and technology, and the food industry technical professional apprenticeship. So they're coming out 2 qualifications, which makes them even more employable, more valuable, because they are getting that knowledge, skills and behaviours, plus all of that experience that comes with it as well.
That's fantastic, thank you. It sounds like a really exciting option, wonderful course. Jim, I'm going to come to you now. So we're just going to think about the route to the final qualification for apprenticeships, and also what an endpoint assessment might look like. So obviously you work particularly around the butchery apprenticeship. So whether you could just sort of give us a little bit of a breakdown of that.
Yeah, so obviously the endpoint assessment comes at the end of the apprenticeship when all the learning has been done, and if we look at the driving test, that's probably the best analogy to use, where the apprentice has gone through some lessons or training with the instructor, and then the independent agency is coming in to assess the knowledge, skills and behaviours at the end of the programme of learning. And that can take various forms. It depends on what the apprenticeship is. If we look at, say, a butchery one, it's made up of a knowledge test, it's made up of a skills assessment in the workplace, and then it's made up of a vocational discussion. But each standard is different, but it's all about assessing the knowledge, skills and behaviours that have been set by the relevant employer groups for each standard, and making sure that that apprentice is attaining the required standard as set by the employers. Great,
thank you. That's really interesting to know that it is actually very sort of bespoke to the employer.
Absolutely, yeah. And as I say, every standard is different. All standards will have a knowledge testing, but then the sort of subject specifics, they vary from workplace observations to projects to various different assessment methods. There's no 2 standards the same, really.
Right, great, thank you. I'm going to come to Kate again now. Just thinking about, obviously, the fact that we've talked about it's a full-time job, but you're going to be doing some training on the job and off the job. And I know that if I was thinking about this, I might think about how on earth I would manage to juggle the studying and the working full-time as well. How have you managed to do that?
So for me, it's been a learning curve of learning to prioritise and learning to work with work, about discussing my workload both at work and discussing my workload at uni. So as you mentioned, you have to have that 20% at least off the job time. So that's been really vital as part of that workload balance. Equally, for me anyway, I have had to do some work outside of work. And that's just been about understanding the end goal of what I'm getting out of it. And actually that is a benefit. And if I want to get it to the level and the how well I want to do in it, then I'll have to put in that effort. But it's been a lot about having those open discussions and conversations, and whether I need a bit more time at work, or what at work could I kind of put down or pick up at different points, and a lot of like prioritization. But it's definitely doable, and I think we've got a lot of different apprenticeships now, and talking to each other about it as well has really helped manage that. So it's definitely doable, but it comes with learning to balance different things, which I think is a great life skill as well.
It definitely is, definitely is. And Letitia, really, same sort of question for you. And I know you've been through your apprenticeship and you're now fully trained and obviously a master butcher. How did you manage the balance?
Yeah, as Kate said, you know, it can be challenging, and it is about obviously having those conversations with your managers, especially in the workplace, about managing your time between how much learning you need to do and how much you need to focus on the job. But again, as Kate said, sometimes if you want to get a little bit more out of it, you sort of have to take it away and, you know, do a little bit in your own time and put that extra bit of effort in just to, you know, get the most out of it. But it's definitely worth doing. It's definitely worth, you know, putting that extra effort in and dealing with those challenges to get the most out of it.
Great, thank you. Yes, something I wish I'd learned years ago, how to prioritise. Right, Jim, back to you again, actually. And it was just thinking about supporting young people with learning difficulties and disabilities, and particularly around the endpoint assessment. Is there anything that sort of that you do as FDQ or an auditing organisation that will support young people?
Yeah, absolutely there is. So we would need the provider, be that the college or the independent training provider, to make an application for a reasonable adjustment. That would then go to our quality team. It will be reviewed, and in majority of cases, as long as there's supporting evidence as to why that reasonable adjustment needs to be put in place, then we will put them in place, and they take various forms of extra time for knowledge tests, readers, scribes, extra time for practical skills assessments, whatever it may be, whatever's in the reasonable adjustment application. But it is down to the provider to work with the apprentice and the employer to apply for that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's not automatic, is it?
No.
So yes, okay, that's useful. Thank you. And Paul, coming to you on this sort of similar sort of point. So equity, diversity, and inclusion is a really important thing now. And obviously, you were saying that your apprenticeships or apprentices are already part of your employment, part of your workforce. But how do you ensure equity, diversity, and inclusion through the process, but also then retain and progress people from diverse backgrounds and with different needs and abilities?
Yeah, it's very sort of simple, really, because as a business, it's a really important, you know, part of what we do, and we openly, you know, encourage, you know, people of all backgrounds, ethnicity, and particularly females working in our butchery departments. You know, Letitia is here; she's a great example, and we've got a number of women that have been on the apprenticeship programme, and other programs within Booker, and you know, we measure it and monitor it quite closely. We want more, you know, more of that in our business. You know, if we're talking butchery specifically, it's historically quite male-dominated industry and profession, and you know, we're doing all we can to kind of change that. And we've had some real success, and we've got some excellent, you know, managers running our butchery departments that are from all backgrounds, and as I say, female as well as male.
Great, that's fantastic to hear. Right, Gareth, I'm going to come to you now. We're sort of beginning to wrap up now. We've got another couple of minutes, and it's really just to sort of bring it all together and really just think about some advice that perhaps you could all give to teachers and careers leads for themselves, but also that they can pass on to their pupils. So, Gareth, thinking as an employer, what sort of advice would you give to somebody, a young person in our case, thinking about an apprenticeship?
So I think it ties in a lot of the things that have been already said around prioritising work. You've got to be prepared that, you know, this is going to be hard work. It's not an easy work. There is that difficulty balancing work and education. In terms of what we look for in the people we're taking on, we need them to demonstrate that they're curious, passionate, proactive, that they're problem solvers, and that they're ready to learn continuously and work with us. We'll provide all the resources for you to help you develop, but really you need to come in with that attitude of being ready to learn and just embrace the opportunity. And some things that we sort of see from some of our more our successful apprentices that come onto the scheme is it's those other life experiences that they've got, as well as sort of the basic education requirements of the courses. It's, have they worked in part-time jobs, you know, have they done extracurricular activities, and those sort of things we find really set people apart when they come to apply for our apprenticeships.
Great, thank you. And Lucy, I'm going to come to you and actually just think about the same sort of question, but from a careers lead and a teacher's point of view. So what sort of advice would you give to them to find out more about apprenticeships?
Yeah, well, definitely access all of the good links that you provided in your slides at the beginning, because all of those I completely agree with, some really excellent information there, which that those career leads could direct to those students that might be interested. But, you know, from the degree apprenticeship point of view, all of the universities that offer that do open days. So go and visit those organisations and actually speak to them about what apprenticeships they offer, which companies they work with, what support that they offer, particularly for those that maybe are worried about particular disabilities that they might have, and how could they be accommodated if they're worried. It's really good to just come and talk to people and actually find out from those organisations what they can offer to support. And yeah, just accessing that literature, and then whatever those questions are, directing that to organisations like us and Receive that offer apprenticeships to be able to provide some context into what those concerns might be, so that we can help them make those choices about what their options may be. And just as career leads and teachers, just please be open-minded about who these are appropriate for, because the person that you think is least likely to be able to succeed in the food industry is the one that succeeds the most. You know, I was never a strong academic person at school. I didn't go straight into university following my A-levels. I went into the food industry. It was until later in my career that I then went back and educated myself to degree level. So, you know, these young people develop at such a different rate these days, that who might be ready now might not be the person that actually succeeds. So yeah, be open-minded and give them the opportunity to explore it, because you never know, they might be the next person that produces a fantastic food product.
Great, that's brilliant, thank you. Right, so last couple of questions actually, and then we'll see if there's any questions from the audience. It's just to sort of Kate and to Letitia. So Kate, now you're nearing the end of your degree apprenticeship. Woohoo! What does the next stage of your career bring?
So the next stage for me is a permanent position. So for us anyway, we're on fixed term contracts, not because there's not a choice at the end of it, but actually there's always, I think 100% of our apprentices have now been a permanent position within the company, which is really good. And so for me, I've just secured my next permanent role, which is great. And it also means that I can move around the different areas now within the department in research and development, and explore the different areas and really see which I enjoy the most, whilst gaining even more different skills and different knowledges as well. So that's really exciting that actually it's not stopping learning now, it's just a different type of learning within the company.
Fantastic, and I'm sure you do a brilliant job of it. Letitia, so obviously you are now fully qualified. So I just think it would be quite interesting to know, is that sort of your career pathway going forward, is this any different to what it might have been had you not completed an apprenticeship?
I think so, because the apprenticeship gave me that next level of training. It gave me that next route in terms of what my options were. And obviously without it, I wouldn't have had those skills and the knowledge to then go on and do obviously my master butcher, and then obviously move into my current role in the operation support and supporting the, sort of the next generation of butchers coming through our training programs.
Great, thank you. And then, sorry, Kate, just going to come back to you very quickly. So what's the one thing that you would say is the best thing about your apprenticeship?
Not mentioned having like obviously the learning on the job, but for me, I've loved working with different people of all ages. So I've had those who've been in their career for a really long time who have become like mentors to me throughout the apprenticeship and shared their huge wealth of knowledge, but also then working with people who are still early on in their careers like me. So I think the benefit of doing an apprenticeship is you obviously get to learn on the job, but you also get to just mix with lots of different people who are willing to share their knowledge and mentor you, which has been really good.
Great, thank you. That's great to hear. And it's not the chocolate at all, is it?
That's a bonus.
Right, okay, so we're just slightly running over. Just see whether there are any additional questions, Ewan.
We had a question from Chris. I did post a couple of links in chat, but he was asking about, he said a couple of students interested in nutrition or dietitian roles who don't want to go to university, but would rather go down the apprenticeship route. And are there any routes for anyone in these areas?
Lucy, I suppose that's probably for you really, but is this something that you could answer?
Yeah, so there aren't any specific nutrition apprenticeships out there. So my recommendation is that they look more broadly, which particularly in the food industry, there are a number of roles that require nutritionist expertise. They're not labelled as nutritionists within that job role, but they are heavily focusing on those particular skills. So I understand that the nutrition is a very sort of popular career opportunity, and that's what they think about when they first think about the sort of food. But encourage them to actually look at what those opportunities would be once they've got that nutrition degree, because often they don't just become a nutritionist within a hospital environment, they become nutritionists in the food industry. We've got an awful lot of nutritionists that are in the food industry. So if there's not a degree apprenticeship specifically for nutrition, maybe have a look at the food industry degree programs, because that could also give them the opportunity that they have to explore nutrition avenue.
Great, thank you. That's really useful. I think if there's one more question, Ewan.
The other question was from Graham. I think it was answered earlier.
Great, okay. Right, so thank you very much. I'm sorry to hear that there was some confusion over the time, but as Ewan said, we will be sharing this. Thank you so much to all of the panel. It's been great to have you with us today. It's been really, really interesting and great to hear just a little snapshot of some of the experiences that both Letitia and Kate have had through the apprenticeship programme, and then also from our training providers and the employers and Jim as an endpoint assessor. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and thank you everybody for joining us.